Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started with chapter one. And this is going to include scientific study of our understanding of behavior, just kind of an overview of everything. And you could see in the PowerPoint the learning objectives, but we'll go ahead and just get started with consuming research and the importance of this. So, in regard to this, learning about research methods is going to help you become a skilled consumer of research, whether that is academic research, whether that is articles that you may see online, maybe it's even social media posts that claim to be based upon research. And a variety of occupations do require the use of research findings. So even like with mental health professionals, people in business environments, educators, all benefit from our ability to evaluate research reports. There's a vast array of fields that are going to use research to guide their practices, also known as evidence-based practices. If you're talking about evidence-based practices, you're talking about a practice or approach or procedure that is based on research. And scientific research has become prominent in public policy and judicial decisions. It has in the past. We'll continue to see how that holds up, but things like behavioral research, developmental psychology, neuroscience have influenced the U.S. Supreme Court decisions. So, research is also going to be important when we come up with and assess programs to achieve certain goals. And this is when you might do program evaluation. It can also be a way to satisfy our curiosity about ourselves. So, why do we do the things we do? Our world, why do certain phenomena happen? And those around us, why do people do and behave the way they do? So, there's a couple different ways that we know something. And as we're going to discuss, some are going to be more empirical than others. So, one of these is intuition. A lot of us rely on intuition or anecdotal evidence to draw general conclusions about the world around us, but these are things that might be flawed. This is basically accepting our judgment or a single story unquestioningly. That's also a single story, is also known as an anecdote. It takes a variety of forms. It might help us explain why we or others behave the way we do. So we might develop an explanation for why we keep having conflicts with a significant other, indicating like, oh, my partner hates me, or living with somebody just doesn't work, or having to share a car doesn't work. Also, it helps to um, explain things that we might observe. So, why a certain phenomena in the world might happen, maybe based upon this event or that event. Again, that is only intuition. There's no empirical basis to it. And as we've discussed in intro, as well as social psychology, there's a variety of cognitive and motivational biases that can affect how we perceive the world, leading to erroneous conclusions. It's, again, a rule of thumb or jumping to conclusions. And the cognitive bias, that's called illusory correlation, occurs when we focus on two events that stand out and occur together. So, with that being said, another type of way we know things is through authority. We're more likely to be persuaded by somebody who seems to be charismatic, trustworthy, respectable, prestigious, gets a lot of likes on Twitter or Facebook, or is an influencer, unfortunately. Those are all forms of authority. We might be pretty likely to accept things that we learn from social media or somebody in power, celebrities, religious figures, and we don't really question it. But the scientific approach, here's where it's important because it rejects the notion that we can accept these things, whether it's through intuition or anecdote or authority, um, on faith, and we're able to falsify these things. So this is where we focus on empiricism. And empiricism, um, we're focused on understanding the world around us and ourselves through observation and replication of that observation over and over and over again to develop reliable conclusions. And we as scientists, we understand things like intuition, anecdote, authority. They can be sources of ideas, but they can also be wrong. And this is where skepticism comes in that we have to be skeptical of everything around us or the thoughts that we have about certain phenomena or intuition regarding cause and effect, in that we need to evaluate these observations of the world through, again, the scientific method, careful logic, and experiments or studies. And so, again, empiricism requires knowledge to come from observation. And with empiricism, we collect and analyze data to form the basis of our conclusions. So, empiricism, again, is going to be the basis of scientific research. Now, with the scientific approach, Goodstein in 2000 described it as an evolved theory of science, defining the characteristics of scientific inquiry, in that data is going to play a central role. Scientists are not alone, and it's adversarial. And it's important that it's adversarial, in that findings can be falsifiable, in that even if we have a good idea or a theory, there's always the possibility that can be proven wrong, especially if it's tested using the scientific method. And also, science is going to be, or scientific evidence, it needs to be peer reviewed as well. And this is going to be the process of judging how valid conclusions to a study are by having other scientists, professionals, experts in a field review the data, results, and conclusions that are made to determine whether it is a valid or evidence-based study and result. And again, this with skepticism, it is important, um, as the scientific approach is going to be valuable over every other type of way we know things in the world, as there is a standardized way that we gather, analyze, and then come to conclusions about something in the world. And obviously, there's nothing wrong with having opinions or beliefs or faith in something, as long as they're presented simply as that, opinions or beliefs, and not fact. And we should always ask whether some opinion or belief can be tested scientifically, or whether there's actually evidence that backs up that a statement that somebody makes, or an opinion or a belief that somebody has. And so with skepticism, we have doubt regarding the truth of something, which is going to be integral through the entirety of this course. It's important to be skeptical and not just accept information at face value. And so it's especially in today's day and age, in which we're constantly bombarded by information, it's integral to be able to be skeptical of everything that we come across, whether it's from the media or even assertions from alleged scientists or professionals or experts, and even pseudoscientific research. So this is going to be pseudoscience is using seemingly scientific terms and demonstrations to substantiate non-scientific claims. Facilitated communication is an example of a pseudoscientific procedure. Feng Shui is an example of a pseudoscientific procedure. Acupuncture is an example of a pseudoscientific procedure as well. And here's some other indicators that might indicate that something is pseudoscientific. If it's a claim that's untestable, so we can't necessarily refute it. Claims that are based on imprecise, biased, or vague language, evidence based on anecdotes or testimonials rather than scientific data. So you might see a program or something of the sort online, and the basis for the validity of that program is on the testimonials or reviews of people who have used it, or quotes from people who have used it. Also, evidence that is from quote unquote experts who have only vague qualifications and do not support their claims with sound scientific evidence. So, an example of this would be uh, RFK Jr., who is going to be our department, the head of the Department of Health in the United States. And he claims to be an expert in everything health-wise, to the extent that he is purporting to not believe in vaccines or the validity of vaccines. And he claims to be an expert in this, but he has zero epidemiological education or experience in this. To back up anything that he is saying in regard to vaccinations. Also, claims based only on confirmatory evidence, ignoring conflicting evidence. Okay, so this kind of gets into confirmation bias in that there's a claim that only takes into consideration information or research that supports a given claim, whereas there's other evidence that supports otherwise. An example of this, if we're on the vaccine track, would be the claim that vaccines cause autism. There was one study in the late 80s, early 90s that did indicate this. However, that study was later refuted. But there are individuals, including RFK Jr., that base their claims of vaccines being dangerous on this one study that is uh, uh, not valid, uh, and has a large amount of errors within it. And he and others use this to make the statement that vaccines are dangerous, where there is conflicting evidence indicating that not only is that study imprecise, but there just is not evidence to back up the claim that vaccines are dangerous or cause autism. Also, reliance on scientific evidence that cannot be independently verified because the methods used to establish that evidence have not been described. So, if somebody makes a claim about, let's say, vaccines being dangerous, and they show possibly a study of this with results, but there's no procedure in that study, one cannot make that claim because you do not know how that researcher got from point A to point B to make those conclusions. So those are all indicators that a claim might be pseudoscientific in nature. And the fact of the matter is that we are all susceptible to false reports of scientific findings on the internet. I am sure that we have all fallen victim to believing something on the internet that is actually false. So some general rules that we can follow is to be skeptical of everything, scientific assertions, assertions from authority, especially if they're supported by only vague or improbable evidence, and taking the time to do an internet search for supportive evidence. And again, in today's world, you may have to do a vast search of the internet, obtain intensive amounts or extensive amounts of corroborating evidence for a claim one way or the other, as there is so much information out there. Additionally, using your academic databases to find peer-reviewed research to either refute or back up a claim. So obviously, as we're saying here, there's a lot of effort that goes into this. And so being a skilled consumer of research, the better the answers to the following questions, the more confident you can be of a study. So what's the initial goal of the study? And that should be early on in an academic article, the description, prediction, determining cause or explanation, and do the authors achieve their goals? Okay, those are some basic questions that we can ask. And what did they do? Okay, what was the methodology and research design that underlies their study, and what exactly was measured? What variables were taken into consideration? How were they conceptualized? How were they operationalized? And then how did we measure them? And then to what or whom can we generalize the results? So based upon the population and sample that was garnered in this study, can we generalize these results to anyone or any groups beyond those that were actually studied in the research? And the better the answer, again, to these the more confident we can be. So what did they find and what were the results? And also looking for other corroborating evidence. Have other researchers found the same results? What were the limitations in the study? Was it a very discrete sample that they pulled? Were there potentially confounding variables that could have played a role? Were there events in society that could have happened? Um, uh, was there data that they had to throw out? What are the limitations? And there should be an entire section in every academic article indicating the limitations to a study. And honestly, there should be limitations across the board. I don't know of any scientific research that would not have limitations. And also, what are the ethical issues present in the study? Again, are they not able to collect data from all individuals in a sample because of their methodology? Or were there potential harm to that could have been brought to participants? Were participants possibly not answering all survey questions accurately because of concern of repercussions? Um, um, was was everybody possible in a sample and population given the same ability to take part in the study? Was there deception involved? So you also have to take those into consideration as well. And there is not going to be a study in which there were not ethical issues. There is no possible way that there were zero potential ethical issues. All right, so scientific research on behavior has four general goals. Okay, describing what we're studying, predicting. So we're going to determine, okay, what are we predicting is going to occur? So I'm going to pull from my research. We're going to predict that believing in a just world um, increases there is a predictive value of just world beliefs on belief in conspiracy theories. And then we determine the causes. Okay, so what are all of the potential variables that could play a role in why somebody might believe in conspiracy theories? And obviously, there's going to be innumerable variables that could do this. And then understanding the results that we achieve. Okay, so here we go with figure one, adolescent screen time during our use during COVID-19. Okay, here we go. So this is going to be based upon race and hours of daily screen time. Okay, so you can see, okay, white adolescents right around 7 hours, Black 10, Hispanic, Latinx 8.73, Asian 6.6, and the entire sample, the average is going to be right around 7.7. So this illustrates, okay, the description in regard to how much time adolescents were spending um, in front of a screen during COVID-19. That is describing that behavior. So here we go with description. Behavior can be something directly observable or something that's less observable. And as we discussed in social psychology, yes, you can see me raise my hand, but then again, there are um, behaviors that are invisible to us as well. And so we may not necessarily be conscious of all of our behaviors or others' behaviors as well. One example of less observable behavior is mental states. So whether somebody is anxious or whether somebody is thinking of a specific thing. Researchers are often interested in describing the ways in which events are systematically related to one another. So how does one event correlate with another? So do jurors judge attractive defendants more leniently than unattractive defendants? What is the correlation between those variables? All right, then we have prediction. So once we can observe to a certain degree, two events are related, we can actually make predictions. So once early childhood poverty is related to lower school achievement, once we can like describe it and observe it, children growing up in poverty can be predicted to have fewer indicators of academic achievement. And so it should be noted these predictions are just probabilistic. They are not concrete in nature. Then we can determine causes. So to know how to change behavior, we need to know the causes. So Cook and Campbell describe three types of evidence that we can use to identify the cause of behavior. So there's temporal precedence in the order of events in which the cause precedes the effect. So the cause has to come before the effect. So, for example, with what we're talking about up here, in regard to this, poverty would have to precede poorer or less academic achievement. So again, that's temporal. The time makes a difference in that the poverty has to come before the effect, which is low academic achievement. And then the variables or cause and effect have to co-vary in that as one changes, so does the other. And so, yeah, when the cause is present, the effect occurs. And when the cause is not present, the effect does not occur. And so as poverty increases, so does as poverty increases, um, academic achievement goes down. And as poverty decreases, academic achievement goes up. So again, they move together. And also, alternative explanations must be eliminated. So we call those confounding variables. So you have to determine whether variables might be at play. And there might be something in regard to poverty, which is a very loaded term. There might be something to the effect of the school system is not good, or there are too many students in a room, or maybe there's the presence of some sort of environmental effect, or maybe it is also nutrition. Which are all parts of poverty, but you would have to make sure to take those out of the equation. Okay, so you can see here the temporal precedence playing video games has to come before the aggression and not vice versa. The covariation, as individuals play violent video games, the more they play them, higher levels of aggression occur. None, nothing happens. And alternative explanations, so it's not necessarily playing the violent video games. Maybe it's a lack of parental supervision that's also resulting in higher levels of aggression. So the final goal is to understand why a behavior occurs. So, for example, even if we know that childhood poverty can be a cause of lower school achievement, geez, with my notes here, we still need to explain the relationship. So new research findings almost always pose new questions that have to be addressed by future research. And so these are going to be recommendations for future research that you will see in academic articles. And so the explanations often must be discarded or revised as new evidence is gathered. So we might say that childhood poverty can be a cause of lower school achievement, but then maybe later on we find, in fact, that, it is poverty, but maybe it is more so nutrition, or maybe it is more so systemic issues. Since such as public policy that actually results in lower school achievement more so than the poverty does. And that's only hypothetical, none of this is actually evidence-based that I'm speaking of. Then we have two different types of research, basic research. Okay, so this is primarily what I believe you will do in this course. I don't think anybody's going to want to do applied research, but in general, when it comes to basic research, we're trying to answer fundamental questions about why people do what they do. And they're designed to address theoretical issues that concern basic phenomena. And so, again, in regard to my research, I'm trying to determine whether there's a significant relationship between just world beliefs and believing in conspiracy theories, and I'm doing that from an evolutionary theoretical framework that explains that there is actually an evolutionary basis to believing in conspiracy theories, as is there the need to believe in a just world. So I do have that theoretical framework underlying the correlation that I'm trying to determine between those variables. So then there's also applied research, and this is going to address issues in which there are practical problems and potential solutions. Program evaluation, which may be a course that you take in your undergrad or graduate studies. This is put into place to assess social reforms or innovations within government, education, or other large institutions. So determining it's we're really doing is determining whether a procedure works, whether a program is effective, whether it is sustainable, whether it is feasible. And a lot of this applied research isn't published, but it's used within a company or by clients of a company. Okay, so to compare and contrast these two, both are important. Neither is necessarily considered superior to the other. Applied is usually guided by basic research, so underlying theoretical frameworks and underlying research that has also been conducted. And the findings in applied settings often spur more basic research as well. And we can never predict the ultimate applications of basic research. So the research with no immediately apparent value ultimately can prove very useful, and it's necessary to both advance science and to benefit society as we better understand relationships between variables and understand correlations between something happening and the effect of that in creating a phenomena, and to understand why people do what they do. And as a result, if we understand why certain phenomena happen or why people do what they do more clearly, we can apply that actually to the workplace or to society through applied research as that is conducted. And all researchers do use scientific methods, whether they're interested in basic research, applied research, or program evaluation. So that is going to underlie every type of research within science. And so, with that being said, let me know if you have any questions. I appreciate you watching this and listening to this, and I hope you have a great day.